So I really appreciate you being here all these years, but especially tonight. As you know, and you were insightful enough to bring this topic forward, that there are millions of people grieving all over the world, and all kind of causes and reasons why. So I know the audience is piling in here. We have a few hundred people in the webinar room, as well as a number of us, peace and blessings, on Facebook and on our YouTube channels. So, sir, you have the stage, and we're all very much intrigued to hear what you have to say about this powerful and important topic.
Very, very good. You know, as CNN introduces, you know, new alert. Grief can kill you. You see that? And so the thing is, you know, grief is pandemic. You know, it has been defined as an emotional response to losing a dear one or something that is very dear to you. You know, a profound sorrow, pain that comes to you, you know, from losing something that's dear, especially someone. You see that? And that definition in itself is problematic. It's incomplete, it's misguided. You see that? Imagine that let's say, COVID or smallpox or the flu were misdefined. You know, we're not understood as being viruses that have a high mortality rate. Suppose, let's say, smallpox, COVID, tuberculosis, and so on were defined, you know, as a mere rash, you know, on your skin, a mere, cold, you know, a non-fatal cold. You see that? Imagine if it had been defined that way, then nobody would bother to study it. No government would spend billions of dollars to combat it. You see that? If these illnesses had been misdefined, you follow what I'm saying, as mere rashes or a passing fever, you know, a cough, and so on. Because they were properly defined and understood as killers, proper attention was given to them, to these illnesses, by authorities, by the public, by scientists, and so on. So it will come as a shocker for people to understand that lots of people are getting very sick from grief and dying from it. You see that? Okay? As a matter of fact, there is a science of grief, okay, with algorithms that were created by scientists, you know, for the past, let's say, 60 years or so, that have been used quite successfully to prognosticate and predict the likelihood of somebody coming down with a serious illness or dying from grief. You see that? Okay? And once we get into the understanding, you know, of this algorithm, we become to understand that grief is really a very serious, you know, disorder, very serious disease that we have to strike an alarm bell. You see that? It's defined as the emotional response, a deep pain, a deep sorrow that follows the loss of a loved one. So here we have this growing gun violence in America. We have, you know, people, you know, being assaulted, raped, mistreated. Lots of people, young men, especially dying in the war theaters. coming back with, the grief, loss of their friends, their careers. Lots of young men left America to go to war with dreams, and they come back totally incapacitated to live those dreams, realize those dreams, and so on. Loss of sons and daughters to violence from different quarters. All over the world, all over Africa, there are these civil wars, and all over the world, all of these immigrants, the immigrants that are leaving their home and their family members, they're just not facing the dangers of the Darien, part of Panama. They are suffering of grief with every step they take because they're leaving their beloved country that they grew up in. They're leaving their friends and families behind. They say with the expectations of coming to be able to work and send money back home and send for the loved ones, only to encounter another set of blockages coming from, American government to agencies not planning properly to admit them and not receiving them properly, and so on. So this definition of grief, that it is an emotional pain, an emotional response of deep sorrow, and so forth, following the loss of someone or something dear to you. A spouse, a child, a career that has vanished. You went for too many years to become an IT master, only to find that your country has outsourced all the IT jobs, to cheaper lands and things of that nature. So now you are grieving. And the problems due to the misdefinition of grief, you see, makes you believe that grief is something that you do, when in reality it's something that happens to you. But because you have been made to believe that grieving is a badge of caring, grieving shows that you care, you inadvertently, you see, nurture the grief, which is really an illness. It's like if you had tuberculosis and you nurture the behavior and the actions that make that tuberculosis worse. You see that? And that's what people are doing. Grief is not something that you do. It's something that happens to you, something very bad, very evil that's happening to you that you need to understand and take proper actions. In 1967, two psychologists of the name of Holmes and Rahe, that's Holmes, and the other one, Rahe, Rahe, they came up with what's called the stress scale. Write that down, Holmes and Rahe stress scale. At the end of this, webinar, you must Google this information or Bing it or whatever, and go to the website, you see, and follow the algorithms you can put in. There's a little one of the websites, actually have a calculator that you can calculate, your likelihood of getting very ill or even dying if you've experienced certain, situations that cause a stress response within you in the past 12 months. That's heavy. You see that? As the young people say, that's dope. You see that? I don't know why they say good things are dope, but hey, we used to say things similar in our days too, right? So the Holmes and Rahe stress scale, has an algorithm that gives points to different, adversities in people's life, like the death of a spouse. They gave it 100 points. Divorce is 23. That is, keeping in mind, we talk about the divorce where you were not ready for it. and so on. Same thing with a separation, 63. Okay, being incarcerated, 63. That will also depend on, where you were incarcerated or for what reasons, were you unjust, just. But 63 points. Personal injury or illness, 53 points. Marriage, getting married, 50 points. Losing a job, 47 points. So, and there are 40 such events, life events, that have been given, scores. That if you add up, let's say you had 5 or 6 of these events, let's say death of a spouse, that's 100 points. Then now you were also, incarcerated at 63 points. You also, let's say, having serious illness, that is 53 points. You also lost your job, 47 points, and so forth. So let's say all in 1 year, you had a number of events that together add up to 300 points. Then you have an extremely high, likelihood of dying from the grief itself. You see that, all becoming very, very ill. You see that. So let's say that, in the same year that your spouse died and you lost your job and so forth, and other things happen in your life, incarceration, defamation or whatever, that grief, the pathology, the physiological mechanism behind that grief will accelerate the death from the cancer, will accelerate, the high blood pressure leading you to death. It is this factor of grief, which is really a form of stress. You see that, which most people don't recognize as such. Okay. Why many people cannot get rid of grief, why people, some people, cancer go into remission and other people's cancer goes into accelerated death. And they think it's because they did X, Y, Z from the cancer, when it was just simply that they were very peaceful and calm, through their various life challenges and so on. You see that, the spiritual factor, which does not come into the thinking of the majority of people.